mushrooms.
Welcome back to the program. We're joined now by independent candidate at this election, former Liberal Party MP for the federal seat, I should say, of Tangi, Dennis Jensen. Thanks very much for your company.
Good afternoon, Peter.
Now, I want to talk to you about, we were exchanging on Twitter yesterday and you were watching me talk to your former Liberal colleague, albeit from state level, Matt Burney, as well as one other yesterday here on Newsday about pareichelia and about party databases, the Liberals of which is called Feedback. Now, can you give our viewers a bit of a sense of how Feedback operates and what pareichelia is, and then we can get into the weeds on this?
Okay, pareichelia is an organisation wholly owned by the Liberal Party that basically, from all that I've been able to ascertain, only has one product, that's Feedback. They have all of the information now on their databases. They used to have a program that actually sat on the computers in your office. It's now all web-based, so all of the information gets fed through the web to them. Now, the way that it works is that the basic system is essentially information from both the electoral roll and also from the telephone directory. So the basic population is, this is the person's name and this is their telephone number. And then what happens is all the contacts and so on that you or your office have are put into Feedback. So for instance, if you get a letter from that constituent, that will be scanned and put onto their file. They will be tagged according to things of interest. For instance, in my electorate, Roe Highway Stage 8 is a very topical issue. It has been ever since I was elected. So you'd have a tag of Roe 8. So, you could then do a search, for instance, if you had some information on Roe 8, okay, who's tagged as being interested in Roe Highway Stage 8.
And then you can
so
communicate, Dr. Jensen, you communicate directly with them. You can keep your postage allowance down if you do it that way, or even just minimise to avoid frustration from voters that they're getting too much paraphernalia on things that they're not interested in. They only get it in a more targeted way. There's all sorts of advantages to it. I wrote about databases years ago, in fact, over a decade ago.
I've got your paper here, interestingly enough.
Is that the Australian Journal of Political Science one in 2004? It might have been another one. Wayne Errington and I did a series of these articles, but while you're searching for that, let me do this as a follow-up. We'll get to pareichelia.
Journal of Political Science.
That's the one. That's the one. We'll get to pareichelia in a moment, but these party databases, we should say, both major parties operate them. The Labor Party's used to be called Electrac. They've given it a less sinister name these days than that.
Campaign Central, which tells you all about what it actually is. It's not actually about helping constituents. It's all about the campaign and gaining votes. And
gaining votes. But let me ask you this. You're now contesting as an independent against the candidate that beat you for pre-selection there, Ben Morton, presumably because Feedback is a party thing. Does he take all of your data over the last 12 years that you've accumulated and then in a sense use it against you in a campaign, or do you get access to it?
I get no access to it. It was pulled. We've had communications with him. I think I've sent you a copy of the letter that was sent to both the State Director and the Federal Director asking some very serious questions. It's never been responded to. I mean, there are elements of this sort of behaviour that may well be criminal. I think that both the AFP and the ATO should be brought in on this as well, because here's a question. The pareichelia pays donations to the Liberal Party. Do they actually claim a tax deduction for donations to the Liberal Party? So they might be trying to, more than just get the taxpayer money to donate to the Liberal Party, they might be trying to double dip. They're certainly double dipping as far as training is concerned.
Well, let's go through some of that process. So correct me where I might be offbeat on this. My understanding is that pareichelia, and I don't know the details of the way that Labor does its version of this, but if they're missing an opportunity to do something like this, if we think it's unethical but perhaps legal, then you've got to ask why or how they're perhaps doing it themselves. But what the Liberals seem to be doing through pareichelia, the directors are the same as the party directors, the address is the same as the Federal Secretariat. It dispenses the software at a price of $2,500 per MP, and that is their allowance for software, Dr. Jensen, if I'm right. So it charges that, it gets the money back, but then there are these donations or whatever you want to call it, fees, that are then charged back to the Liberal Party in excess of $1 million over the last 3 years.
Yeah, that's right. It used to be that members would only get about $1,600 back of the $2,550, but I think that in the last year that has changed, and you can, effectively the taxpayer pays the full amount. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? One product, and Julie Bishop reckons they don't make a profit. Well, what are they using then to donate to the Liberal Party?
Well, they probably don't make a profit because I would have thought they don't make a profit because they're donating to the Liberal Party.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, interestingly enough, I was looking up the issue with the Labor Party, and the way that they do it with Campaign Central seems to be a little bit different, in that the company that they have is affiliated with the ACTU. Now, I found it quite strange that the CFMEU pulled a critical ad about feedback pretty much immediately that it was put on YouTube. And the other questionable thing with that is also that organisation provides data and information to telemarketers and so on. Now, the question is,
well,
where are they getting that information?
Well, I want to get to that, because that's an interesting one that I've long had suspicions in this space about. But on the Labor Party, you mentioned the business entity that does their software training having an affiliation to the ACTU. My assumption, I've never been able to get to the bottom of it, but my assumption when researching this in years gone by was always that there was that union link, and that the unions offer a myriad of donations to the Labor Party. So the profitability of that company feeds into union profitability to be able to then pass on donations. Yeah. So in other words, both major parties are doing this, and in one form or another, and have long been doing it. It strikes me, though, Dr. Jensen, that it is so brazen that you would take, hundreds of thousands of dollars of entitlements and then just donate it back to the political parties, either directly or indirectly. If they also take a possible tax deduction, as you've mentioned, we'd potentially be talking about double dipping. You mentioned that earlier. Take us through when you first became aware of this.
Well, it's something that actually someone suggested that might be occurring, and I think that, if you're pretty smart in the way you run your business, and I mean here smart in inverted commas in a highly unethical way, that's a way that you can do it, to not only make the donation, but then claim that donation against expenses for your company, where you do get tax deductions for donations to political parties. I mean, all sorts of businesses do that. The other side of it, of course, is the training side, where training on feedback is provided to staff, electorate office staff, by people that are theoretically on ministerial staff. They're all seconded to this unit that then goes around and provides training, feedback training. So there's obviously yet another bit of taxpayer funding that is being used, in this case, staffers' salaries, to actually prop up this feedback system, which feeds money back into the Liberal Party.
Is it your suspicion that the operation of this sort of a structure around databases and around Parakeelia is one reason why support for a federal ICAC has not been forthcoming from the government?
Absolutely. Look, I think the reality is both sides are worried about it. I mean, they're both running very, very quiet on it. I mean, when you think about criminal cartel behaviour, you have criminal groups that will sort of act against each other unless there's some threat to their business model. Then they will likely gang up together in order to make sure that their business model survives, and then get back to competing against each other again. And you could almost say that in terms of elections, that's what happens. They have that aspect where at the moment you have a look at what's happening with independents and Xenophon team and so on, and preferences.
Well, I don't know, Dr. Jensen, whether you've read this or not, but you're mirroring a lot of writings in political science literature about the cartelisation of party politics, where the major parties essentially collude on the rules of the game. Once upon a time, we had the mass party phenomenon. Then it became the catch-all party. Then it became Panebianco's electoral professional party, where they were sort of excluding party members, and it was all about professionalism. Now, the theory, and they're not theories that can't sit parallel to each other, but the theory now is that this happens a lot as a cartelisation process to keep new entrants out of the game as and where possible. Let me ask you something, though, if I can put my cynical hat on just for a moment. Why raise this now? Why, you know, some viewers might be wondering, you've benefited from this or been party to this in one form or another for 12 years, but now you're speaking out. Is it a case of, to be a whistleblower, you first have to get out of the system that you were part of?
Well, some of the stuff, Peter, has only really come to light of late. I mean, the issue of the electoral donations to the Liberal Party I was completely unaware of before this happened. Issues relating to privacy, I didn't really have too much concern about it prior to the system actually effectively going from a situation where you were updated with a CD-ROM and the feedback program was on your system, to one where it became a web-based system a couple of years ago, where basically all of that electoral office information obviously would go to some Parakelia server somewhere, or otherwise indeed be in the cloud. It's a very real concern. Now, what really sort of brought it to light to me in my own mind was when the Liberal Party just unilaterally pulled my access to feedback. Although the taxpayer has paid for it until November. The question is, what's happened to all that information and all those dealings that I've had on constituents that are on that system? Have they been completely deleted? Somehow I doubt it. Now, I mean, I don't have too much of an issue with metadata going to the Liberal Party, but where you have this detailed information, I have grave concerns. And my view is we really need to have a situation where political parties are no longer exempt from privacy rules. I see no reason whatsoever for political parties to be excluded from privacy
Or if you
laws.
are going to exclude them from privacy laws like public organisations are, then you have to have freedom of information apply so that people can look up what is or isn't in there on them in these databases. It can't be a sort of a fall between the cracks on both sides. Dr. Jensen, we're out of time, but I anticipate 12 years on, keep hold of your files for me, because I can see a follow-up academic article or two on this very subject. It sounds like the databases have moved on a bit, but I appreciate your time today.
Thanks very much, Peter.